The music always gets me going. Good afternoon, evening, and welcome to In12d. Today we have a special guest with us. Unfortunately, our co-host Kathy won't be with us this week. She'll be joining us later on this month. And let's not talk too much. Susie, it's all yours. Introduce
Thank
our
you,
great guest
Ramzi.
tonight.
Yeah, today's a lovely episode of in 12D. We've another amazing guest, a friend of mine who I had the pleasure of meeting. I'm guessing it must have been about 12 years ago now. Maybe it's a bit more, maybe it's 14. But our guest today and I met on a program with Jean Houston, and we just kind of struck up a good friendship, I would say. And over the years, we've hung out together, we've visited each other, we've traveled together. So it gives me great pleasure to give you a very warm welcome to Sinead Quinn, who's based at the moment in Spain, in near Alicante in Spain. So welcome to In12D, Sinead, and thank you for saying yes to joining us and sharing a lot more about your ordinary life, which is really way beyond ordinary, and the extraordinary life that you live. And we're going to delve into that in more detail. I'd love you to say just a few things about yourself, because your bio, I'll get into it over the course of the session, but I'd love you to kind of bring yourself into the show.
Thanks. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here, and it's especially lovely to be here with Susie, who, I've known for about 12 years. So we met on a course that was about Supreme Destiny, which was something that I was carrying like a load for most of my life, after sitting in a church in Ireland as a small child, and the priest telling us from the pulpit that we needed to know what our gift was, and it was imperative that we used it. The subtext was, otherwise we would burn in hell. So that was something heavy that I carried for a long time. And it seemed like it needed to be a really big thing, that for your life to have meaning, you had to really stand out. You had to be the biggest or the most or the best or the new Mother Teresa or something like that. And for most of my life, I never really knew what I wanted to do. Apart from travel, I loved traveling. I still love it. And meeting people, new cultures, learning their ways, seeing through different eyes those nuances of life, and really coming back with a full suitcase from trips, learning languages I always loved, just adventure and joy. But there was no career description that matched that. And so for most of my life, I'd say I kind of wandered around with a blindfold, until I got tired of looking and trying to push through to something that wasn't coming. And it was around the time, a couple of years before I met Susie, that I just stopped everything. I stopped the work that I had been doing and just sat and started to feel in and open the space for a different way of living.
That's really what we wanted to kind of start with, was that point, like where you decided to stop this, I suppose, that big external search, beyond, with all the travels and all the different experiences that you did have leading up to that point. But I think what followed for the next decade is this kind of exploring the complexities of life, and like going into such incredible detail. I think you would have described it, you said to me before, like you see it all on this massive big screen. So seeing all the moving parts, and then being able to do a lot of very deep work. So how did it go from, what was that kind of point when you started to really sit and tune in? Like, did it scare the pants off you, or, was it just a natural kind of evolution for you?
It kind of came in spurts over the years, and I'd kind of move towards it and then move away from it. And outer traveling started to lose its shine. Everywhere started to kind of look the same, even though I was in different countries. There was this kind of inner part that just wasn't satisfied. It just wasn't filling where it used to fill before. And I I was lying in bed one morning and I asked myself a question and had no idea what the answer was, and that scared the shit out of me. And in that moment, I took a decision. I didn't realize what I was signing at the time. I thought it would be like 3 months, but I decided that I didn't really care what was on that, what I had to walk through, what I had to journey through to get to that answer. If what I was looking for was on the other side, so I kind of signed a carte blanche to the universe. Do what you will. I'm up for the ride. And yeah, it was 13 years. Some of those years are very, very difficult. So I stopped everything. I live in the countryside in Spain, so it's quite isolated. It's very quiet, it's very peaceful. I gave up my job. At the time, I was living on my own, and I had no idea how to go about it. But I just sat and I just listened. And some days I'd sit maybe for 14 or 16 hours and just listen. And every day I would wake up and I'd feel into my body, I'd feel into my emotions, I'd feel into my surroundings, and I'd just kind of feel what I needed in that moment. And then it would just appear, or through a phone call, or, you open the laptop and suddenly you find a mudra or a mantra or a TED talk on something or a book, and so it was just, one step after another, and really, I think, surrendering into the not knowing. And I fought the I don't know for a long time, because we're trained to be experts in things and to perform, and I don't know doesn't have so much space. But actually, I don't know is part of the complexity that we can welcome in. And when we do welcome in all of the parts that flow, the parts that are stuck, the parts that are fragmented, the parts that are coherent, and don't try and make one have more weight than another or more space than another, something really, really incredible and amazing happens. And then life just becomes really joyous and, in a way, simple, but very enriching. Yeah.
I just want to clarify one thing. You said you asked a question and you were scared of it. What was your question? If you don't mind.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. It's not so much the question. It was the absolute not knowing was really impactful for me. It was that there was no part of me that knew the answer at all. It was like finding this black hole. It wasn't the question that scared me. It was the absolute not knowing, not having like any inkling, any clue whatsoever as to what the answer was, but knowing that I wanted to know the answer, and being willing to walk through whatever it took to get there. And again, I repeat, I thought it would be 3 months. and it's an ongoing process. I mean, it's lifetimes. I'm sure I've been walking this question for many lives. It's never over. And I think that's really, really the spectacular beauty of life is that you're never at the end point. There is no end point. Just more of life reveals, more space opens. You feel deeper. You feel things on a more precise level, on a deeper level. And so there's never a chance to get bored. It's impossible. You can never be bored in life. And I just think that's the gift of life, and that's the abundance of life. I think life is so bountiful that we can always be discovering it. And I think that's absolutely incredible. That's amazing. It just brings me so much joy.
Let me just note one thing. I know what you meant, and I totally understand it. there's no end or there's no point to achieve. Is that because there's always more? Or is it because every time you achieve, you kind of create or open a space for something else to manifest?
I actually don't feel that life is about achieving. I think we've convinced ourselves that we need to achieve things, but actually we're achieving just by breathing. That's it. We're just here to be alive. And we can different things is our way for our energy to express itself. So you can create a home, or you can learn something new, you can study another language, you can travel, you can bake a cake, you can, I don't know, do your hair, or like paint your nails, anything. You can anything. Everything is a moment where your creativity can express itself, but we don't tend to connect with what's happening before the achieving. There's a lot happening before the achieving, but we tend to look at the achieving, and we're brought up to be performance related, so, and that just never worked for me. That ended me up in depression and really, really blocked in my life. And as far as discovering life is concerned, we have at each moment, and if you dedicate the time to inner silence and to opening the spaces, the more space you have, the more complexity you can hold. The more complexity you can hold, the different perspective you have on life. So when you're like a child, your perspective of life is that structure. And then as you evolve and you open more space, more of life can land in you. So it's really experiencing something different because more of life is landing in you. And if every day is the same, and if life feels boring and it feels stale, it's because there's not enough space inside for more of life and its complexity to land. So then that's really the time to sit and open the space, open those inner spaces. And a lot of opening those spaces has to do, I discovered, integrating trauma. We all have trauma. It takes up a lot of space. There's a lot of frozen places in us. There's a lot of accumulation of things that we weren't able to digest, either in ourselves, in our family structures, transgenerationally, collectively. So it takes up a lot of your inner space. And trauma integration releases that energy back to where it came from, to the all that is nothing. And that opens more space in us. And then more complexity can come in. And the more complexity that you can hold, the richer life feels. So that's my understanding of why life is always changing. As you're evolving and developing, your perspective does too, and how much you can feel of life.
So, Sinead, just to I'm going back to when I met you first. We were both kind of on slightly different paths, but the same. I suppose we were seeking something, and just with different tools and different methods of doing it. But what was very evident was that connection. That connection to each other, to like the little synchronicities that would have happened, and just those kind of breadcrumbs along the path that kind of, like you mentioned, show up each day when you're in that moment. You get to see it or feel it, or you can follow those like little impulses. And I know from your story, you following those impulses brought you to, I think one of your teachers would have been Thomas Hubel, and then you went to, I think you were living in Holland soon after that for a while, or in Amsterdam, or Netherlands, let's say, for a few years after that. And that's when you really were doing the trauma integration work. I know you were working privately with clients as well as doing your own personal kind of healing work as well. So as somebody who's, would you say, trauma informed, is there tools or practices, or does it really require a third party to help with that? Like, is it something that people can go into themselves? From your experience, how would you guide somebody if they're feeling that nudge to kind of finally kind of look within themselves at what's going on, or what they're carrying?
I would recommend doing it with somebody. From my own experience, I did 2 years on my own because I just thought that that's what you had to do, that you just embarked on the journey on your own. But I also just I'm fortunate enough to have been born with the necessary tools to know how to navigate those spaces. So I spent 2 years doing that, and my mind was absolutely blown. I mean, what I discovered was more that I could ever have imagined about life, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I got time to get. That's when Thomas Hubel turned up in my life. So he's been working with collective trauma for over 20 years, relational space. So most of our trauma has happened in relationship, so with another person or people. It's happened through relating, and so it needs to heal in relating. And there's only so much that you can do on your own. So I did develop in that time, my own competencies started to develop, that inner listening, the natural inquiry, really noticing my own dynamics with myself and with others, so becoming more self-aware. But then that field of relating was something that was new to me, and I'm still really learning about it, because I noticed that I'm like a little baby in that field, really. But I really could see the effect of how necessary it is for another person to be with you in those spaces. So we do need that relating. It needs to form that energetic movement from another person, and also to feel how it feels when you're welcomed, and how you're welcomed exactly as you are. And that it's okay to show up, and that you haven't got a clue what you're doing, and your life is totally falling apart, and you've got these amazing parts of you and these fragmented parts of you, and they shift and move. And in one moment you're 3 years old, and the next moment, you're your actual adult age, and then all the responses that are in between. So this is also the complexity of a person, which is also incredible. All these different shades and colors and feelings that they have, because the entire person is showing up with all these different timelines. Each person isn't showing up as one timeline. So in my case, I'm 54. I just turned 54 last week. And I don't turn up as a 54-year-old woman. I turned up partially as 54, and as a baby, and as a fetus, and as a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and a 13-year-old, and a 20-year-old, and all the ages in between. So all the parts that are still fragmented and haven't digested their part of life, they're frozen. And until that starts to move and grow up, you're not at your physical age. Nobody is. I don't know anybody who's at their full physical age in their development. And so you can have differing responses to the same situation. And the one situation that gets everybody riled up, and there's a whole industry built up around it, like Hollywood and Bollywood, is love and relationships. That's it's our big thing. We're made to connect. That's what we most want, we most desire, and it's what also helps us become who we are. So in those, like, love relationships really shows you, they're brilliant for showing you how many fragmented parts there are. I like this person, or I don't like this person. That's a very childlike approach. And you can have the adult has, what they want in a relationship, but the 15-year-old is also having her say too. And that's complexity. And it's amazing, and it's beautiful when you can, for yourself, and when someone else also does it for you, and when you're with other people, that you can include all these different parts of the timeline, and that all of them are welcome. So that person can just turn up exactly as they are. And within that welcoming, something happens. The parts that are stuck, they can soften, they can begin to melt and move. And literally there are moments when you can just feel a person, like in 3 to 4 seconds, go from a child to an adult. And then you know that part is integrated. So
do you think that
I
life
just feel that's another part of the richness of life as well, to really within yourself.
Sorry, we're there's a slight delay. Sorry about that. So do you feel,
Susie, your sound broke up a little bit, so I didn't get your full question. If you don't mind repeating.
Sure. There seems to be a lag. My question was, do you feel like that life?
Your question's fragmented.
I guess we let it go. Ramzi, do you want to step in?
Yeah, I'll ask a question. You talked about self-awareness briefly. Do you consider self-awareness as the key to releasing trauma?
Do I consider self-awareness? And then the rest of the question just cut.
Oh, as a key to releasing trauma. No.
So yes, okay, self-awareness. Yeah, it's because self-awareness is self-relating. So I think there is a lag on the sound, but from what I understood is if self-awareness plays a role in trauma integration. And my answer would be yes, because self-awareness at the end of the day is self-relating. And that's part of the relating is the healing process. So when you're also able to relate to yourself, how am I relating to this situation? And there within yourself, again, you'll have those different timelines. So your adult, can be undisturbed by something, very relaxed about something, not taking it personally. And then the small child can be in the hysterics and in fear. And it's just really noticing within your body what's happening, within your emotions, what's happening, what kind of thoughts you're producing, how you're seeing it, and becoming aware of what age are you actually seeing from? Am I relating to it from an adult perspective, or am I relating to it from the part that's frozen in time? So, but all of that is a self-relating. That's for me what self-awareness is. It's just your own inner relating to your responses. So it's that already, that's a healing step. And it helps also to separate. So within trauma, there's very little space, and everything is either zoomed in or zoomed out. So zoomed in is when you get way too close, and zoomed out is when you've run for the hills. You constrict, you contract, you pull yourself back, you pull your energy up. And so there's when there's very little space, everything is mixed up together. And so your response from the past feels like it's the present moment. But when there's enough space, you can separate it out. So you can feel what your adult relating is to it. And then you can feel the reactiveness of the younger places. And when you can separate the two, there's an adult that can actually be present for the child, who can relate to what's happening to the child. And that again creates the healing movement. So it's self-awareness for me is self-relating, and that's a big part of trauma integration.
Can I try and see if a question will work from my side? So in part of your bio, you use the phrase life intelligent perspective, and like I was trying to get my head around that. Like, so my interpretation is that like life is informing you, is it like the intelligence of life informing you for, I suppose how you see yourself and how you relate to others and how you see yourself in the world, maybe, or the world in you. Can you expand a little bit on life intelligent perspective?
Yeah, I am. Our idea of intelligence. Yeah. So our idea of intelligence has been very structured in the school system, and so actually, I notice in your question, which is flowing through us the entire time.
We are having technical difficulty in Spain.
Definitely, yeah.
You know,
She's gone. She's back.
we never.
Okay. Sinead, if you hear us, please reboot your computer. We'll be waiting for you.
Yeah, it's a pity. I was dying to hear what she had to say on that. But she's
Same
totally
here.
frozen now. But you know, I know from working with Sinead or being friends with her that you know, she's been like this all of her life, and she'd say this herself. She's always had this different perspective, and so she sees things differently, or she sees a lot more than the average person, and like she can have such insight.
No, she's still frozen. Oh, she's gone. Okay. Sorry, Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, so like she's a person who has incredible insight into life because she's just always had this different advantage or perspective on life. And I think it's to do with the sort of natural curiosity that we have as children, and those natural born gifts that a lot of people have, but they dampen down over time. Like I'm sure, Ramzi, when you were young and growing up in Lebanon, like, you know, what sort of perspective did you have on life? Like, did you feel like you were having to, I don't know, kind of conform to social norms, or had you a more imaginative sort of experience? Or
Well, a lot of things happened. Now there's Ramzi in the spotlight.
no pressure?
No, all good, all good. I had a different perspective on life too. So I grew up in a very Christian area, so everything had to be conformed within the religion part. But I was never part of that religion, and I was able to see beyond that. And I was actually kind of oh, so sorry. Let's just see if we got it. No, we don't have her yet. Oh, here she is. Are you? Sorry, are you back?
I'm back.
Okay, yeah, you're back. You're back. So let me just finish it quickly. I was answering a question Susie asked me. So yes, I had a different perspective, and I moved
I
to.
can hear you and see you
Okay,
now.
so I moved away from the traditional view of
Can
life
you
within.
can hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah. So I
So
moved away from the
you can
traditional
tell,
way.
yeah,
I'm just going.
you can hear me
Yeah.
okay?
Yes. Yes. Just one second. I just finish up my
Okay.
my sentence, and I'll get back to you. Sorry about that. So I moved away from the traditional view of things into something else, which I did not know what it was. But that not knowing what was driving me was actually helping me see beyond the beyond what was happening around, to a point where a faculty grew very strong within me, which is the faculty of imagination. And my imagination took me to spaces that I wasn't aware of before. And one good example is that I was imagining being outside of the country, and I actually on a nightly basis, it will come, and then I will have to form a story around it, and the picture will start to grow, and slowly over a certain number of time, a certain number of months, I had a full story that was actually manifested itself without any effort from my end, that brought me to a different space. So I wanted to leave, and I just imagined the whole thing. It just came, and then from there it just manifested, and I was able to leave Lebanon and go to Canada.
So was that what you were imagining all those evenings when you were there? You were imagining seeing yourself, maybe not necessarily knowing what the country was, but not being where you were. Like, was it how to escape from the war, from the challenges that you were in?
It wasn't an escape. See, there's a difference between escape and going into the comfort of a picture, but it was more of a life that is moving on in a different direction than what I could see at that point in time. And to a point where I started thinking in English, because I was in a different place in North America where I had to speak English, and I couldn't speak it very well because, my first language was Arabic, my second was French, and third was English, and I was all confused with all the languages. But I started to think in English because I was in North America somewhere using that language to communicate. And that was like kind of how I'm going to explain. It's hard to explain, but it was a drive. Actually, it's not a drive. It wasn't from me. It wasn't coming from me. It was just happening, and I was there just observing it from the sideline, and it brought me to North America, where literally I had to switch completely to English from Arabic and some French, and just make it all one language.
Wow. So like it's a bit like what Sinead was saying earlier when we had her on the call, like that you were able to kind of follow your own breadcrumbs, like following it's your path is kind of laying out in front of you, and your kind of willingness to say yes to life, yes to something even greater, without exactly trying to manifest a specific particular outcome. But it was like calling you across, to a completely different continent.
Yeah.
Wow. We have Sinead back. I see her. We'll
Welcome.
just check. Oh, the minute we mention her, she spins again. Okay, love it. Right.
Sorry about that, everyone.
For bearing with us on this one, because it's been a challenging connection for sure. It looks like we have Sinead back. I'm going to just pose another question just to keep her on track. I have written here in my notes, Sinead, that a lot of the time you were feeling lost in life, that feeling of like no compass, not knowing where the map was taking you, because we were talking about Ramzi moving countries. So when you're living that way, like it's kind of like blindly living through, kind of without the map, without the compass, without the knowing. Is that how you got to the point where you became very comfortable with not knowing? Because I know that's something that she talks about. We've lost her again, though. So that's the end of that question. Yeah.
You know how to scare her.
We'll just have to get her back another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now the questions are going to be different, and we do apologize for the technical difficulties that our guest is having. But I'm sure, like, I can't even add her to. Let me add her just to see. No. Oh, here she is. Can you hear us, Sinead? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So, after maybe a little bit of a detour, which
Yeah,
would
we're talking
kind of
about
reflect a lot of people's lives, I think. So Susie had been asking about life intelligence and to expand on life intelligence. So what I noticed when you were asking the question, Susie, was this separation that we have. I think all of us hold this separation from life intelligence. It's happening all of the time within us. You know, it's what's allowing me to speak to you, what's allowing me to breathe, to do all of those gazillion inner processes, you know, that are happening in my body right now. But we're taught and brought up to see intelligence as as something completely different, as more like book knowledge and outside, something that we get from the outside and bring it in. We're never really brought up with feeling where is this intelligence within us and how is it showing itself. So one of the things that I really noticed that created a big shift for me in my work when I was working with people was trauma tends to look very messy on the outside. You know, a lot of times it doesn't look very coherent. It doesn't look like the person really knows what they're doing, or their life looks like it's really not working. But actually the responses in trauma come from life intelligence. And when you start to see it that way, so it's messy on the outside, but what's happening on the inside? What's informing this way of sensing and feeling? When you start to connect to that, it's like everything turns completely, and you just see life differently. You see and feel people differently, and you really start to. I would say it's what happens before compassion starts to arise. And compassion just comes as a natural flow. But it's coming from the part in you that has this deeper understanding of life. And now actually what you've done is created these incredible strategies in the most horrendous of circumstances, oftentimes, as a response that permits you to keep functioning and to keep living and to keep being able to show up in the world. And oftentimes those strategies were developed when you were a child, when you had very little resources and very little autonomy, because as a 4-year-old, you had to learn how to survive within circumstances that you had very little control over. Because as a 4-year-old, you can't just pack your bags and say, right, that's it. I'm going to buy my own house and I'm going to live my own life. You're stuck in the system. And so as a child, when you look at the absolute incredible creativity that children have, and these strategies that then create difficulties oftentimes in adult relationships because they haven't been upgraded. They're still child strategies. And again, I'll go to what Ramzi asked about self-awareness. When you start to become aware of, oh, this was a strategy that I created as a child, sometimes you still need to keep them. You still need to keep doing that because it provides something for you and there's an intelligence in that. Or it's the moment for an upgrade. And again, it's life intelligence that upgrades. But we're so separated from it. Like if very few people actually. So it is life intelligence is a constant streaming within us, but we're very disconnected from it, and the disconnect has come from trauma. So the more you integrate your trauma, the more you start to have a feeling of that streaming of life intelligence through you. So, and there's the times when we feel these impulses and we follow them and we see that they bring us somewhere or they manifest something, as Ramzi said. But what happens before all of that is that there was space for the streaming. There was enough space to feel it, to see it, to feel it, to listen to it. So oftentimes we're 15 steps ahead and we're missing everything that's happening before the something. And that's the part where you can really start to feel the life intelligence. So we don't look at results as being results of a life intelligence, and especially not when things look messy. But it's there, it's always there.
So from just moving on to the next part that we wanted to cover, is that what takes you beyond the traditional structures? You know, you mentioned social dynamics, you know, getting to your potential. I suppose ultimately each person's kind of transformation, like as you integrate trauma, you make the space, and that streaming comes through, you know, life comes through you as you. Is that how you kind of get beyond or transcend those traditional structures that we were, like you said, brought up with originally? Like, so is that where you're leaning towards with that?
So when you talk about social dynamics and structures, a lot of those structures are fixed, and anything that's fixed is reactive and comes from the past. So something that's very flexible and vibrant and very innovative and very quick to change and move and flow comes from swimming in that life intelligence stream or listening to it as it comes in. But when working with people or when working with businesses, so when I work with a business that's in Mexico, so we don't just look at the product. We include everything that's there. So what's happening in the CEO and the founder of the company, what's happening in her, the social dynamics that are structures that are crystallized, they're collective structures that are crystallized. And they give a lot of information about what possible responses a team can have. So whether they will, how much space there is for their innovation, how much space there is for their potential, or how little space. So how stuck it is, how pulled back they'll be, how forward they will be. Those don't come so much from the company. You have to start looking, and you can see it and you can feel it. These structures that are crystallized intelligence. So it's not intelligence that's in movement anymore. It's something that's fixed. So it will always give the same response. It's stuck in a loop. So no matter what you try that's different, you know, companies a lot of times think if we have a new idea, everything will change. No, until you unstick what's stuck, you'll always have the same response. So you need to, it's fundamentally important, these social dynamics that we have, because they're crystallized structures that are informing your entire field, and they're informing your team about how to behave with each other. And it's very unspoken language, but it's a very loud conversation that's happening all the time. So that needs to be included. And this is the complexity of working with complexity. When you're working with a company, obviously, there's a lot more complexity than when you're just working with a person or when you work with couples who want to improve their relationships. So you have more of the collective, you've got more of these crystallized social dynamics. You also have the life intelligence of the field of what it wants to become. So, like, say, for example, I'm in an area where there's a lot of wine in Spain. Spain would be very famous for wine. Also, Ramzi's sitting with olive trees. There's a lot of olive oil. Those fields want to become something, and that will influence the innovative products that emerge or trends. And people start looking at trends, or they look at, new innovation, but they're not looking at what happened before that, which is actually that the field and the product wants to become something. It's like it has its own personality, and you can listen to it and you can follow its movements. And when you do that, energy becomes very self-organizing. So your business development and your business strategy becomes self-organizing. It takes care of itself. You don't have to plan, you don't have to strategize. You have to listen and give the space for the movement. And then it will organize. The distributors just appear. The markets will appear. The people who are interested in it will appear. The clients will appear. And I have been living this with the company that I work with. I've been seeing it, and how you create the fertile soil and you plant the seeds, and then it all starts to happen. It's very, very exciting. It's a completely different way to do business. Frederic Laloux talks about it in his book, Reinventing Organizations. This self-organizing capacity that we all have, but we tend to want to control, which comes from trauma, and we want to feel that we think we need to keep the universe spinning. It's very difficult for us to surrender, and we get so busy about activities and performance and numbers, and it's all this pressure on us that we start to act only from the head rather than to sit and give the movement its space, and then it can self-organize. But also you have to include all of the complexity, which is these crystallized structures, what the field wants to become, the competencies that are being brought to that field, and the potential, which is the part that hasn't landed yet. So you also have to listen to the potential that wants to come in and give it the space for it to land. You need to give it that base. And the more potential there is, the wider the base needs to be. And how do you widen your base? By integrating trauma. So all of those factors are all in movement in the marketplace. And if you talk about genuinely being innovative, it means that you're bringing something new of life in that hasn't been done before. But that's not our general mainstream idea of innovation.
Do you have any, can I just interrupt you there, Sinead? Do you have any, I'm just thinking of the listeners here, just to, you're speaking from an experience that you're living by working with this company at the moment, but are there other companies that are working on that kind of model as well? Like, are there any other examples that you might be able to share to help us kind of grasp this shift that seems to be available? Whether it's people are taking it up or not is another thing, because obviously there's an awful lot of toxic kind of masculinity and power struggles going on in the world of business and finance and politics. So, but I do believe in, that divine masculine expression and, a different, like you said, an innovative approach. Like what companies are doing that, and what does that look like?
So two of the companies that come to mind would be Patagonia and Eileen Fisher. Both are to do with clothing. So Patagonia, for me, when I tune into the company, has probably the most coherent energy of any company that I've experienced, and a really massive base. It's like literally like feeling, the Himalayas. It's like feeling a mountain. And Patagonia didn't start as a business. The founder of Patagonia loved mountaineering. It started for a man's love for a mountain. That's how Patagonia got started. He was working with metal in a metal shop, and in his free time he would go mountaineering, and they used to hammer nails into the mountain, to have their grip to go up the mountain. And one day he realized that he was harming that which he most loved. So he started to look at what he could do to not damage her. And then people saw what he had created. They started coming, looking for it. And the company just kind of became, he didn't set out to start a company. And a lot of their practices are because they're listening to something. They're aware of the global crisis, for example, how few cotton harvests are left. It will maybe happen in our lifetime that cotton will disappear. The need for doing business in a different way, right? Doing it by listening to something, but the foundations of that company were already built on that listening. That's why, in my understanding, it's such a coherent, energetically, it's such a coherent company, because it started from the listening. It started from the being with what's happening before the action. And then the action coming from listening to that streaming. So they, for example, if they create something that's innovative, that has a positive impact on the environment, they gift it to their competitors, because their understanding is, we need to start doing something differently. We need to start, creating clothes in a more intelligent way. And it's beneficial for everybody to have these practices. So that's a marked difference. They're on a collaborative game board, and anybody who's keeping innovation to themselves to have the competitive edge is on a completely different game board, which is the competitive game board, where I win, you lose. So they're two completely different game boards. So Patagonia is definitely on a collaborative game board. And another company that I mentioned is Eileen Fisher. So she has shared that she has a meditation practice. So she sits and she listens to the movements of what are happening in her company. So what she's listening to is the potential, the unformed potential. So she's listening to what's ahead, and she's listening to that streaming of the field. And from that, then she takes her next step. So her action comes from silence, it comes from spaciousness, it comes from welcoming, it comes from listening. And all of those are feminine qualities. So in order for the masculine to be truly divine, it comes from the spaciousness, which would be the feminine. But then they start to dance with each other. You start again, you start to get this relating movement. And that's what creates something that's there. Then there's this space for self-organizing. And that's when the magic happens. That's when amazing, incredible things happen that you could never, your brain will never get to that space on its own. I would be very shocked if it did. I just can't see how it would happen.
I think it does on an individual level. I think from the individual perspective, where it's just you, it's that flow of life. Like when we're able to surrender to the flow, that magic does happen to us as individuals, because like you said, the opportunity shows up, or the book, or the TED talk, or whatever is needed next shows up, and you make, when you're in that flow, you can recognize it, because you've created a spaciousness. You're not trying to push the rock up the hill. Like, you're not trying to control the universe. You become, what I see is like the co-creator. Like, it's a co-creation, it's a gentle dance. It's that kind of subtle movement. And like, I'm interested in, what are there companies now where, maybe meditation and practices. I know a lot of companies give lip service to, wellness or mindfulness or whatever, but what is the real outcome of that? Like, when people become more conscious in a business environment or in a organizational kind of structure, Ramzi, do you have any, I know you've come from a very corporate background as well. So I'm just curious what your take on what Sinead is saying and what I was saying is.
See, corporate America is totally different than what you or Sinead was talking about. It's more about do and get a results, and every month you have to outperform yourself, outperform your previous month and your previous quarter and year over year and so on. It's more of a highly competitive, outcome-driven corporate world. But now we're seeing more of the small businesses where they're into allowing things to come up, allowing a product to come up. It's like this, the evolution of in12d. It just came out. It is required to be out there. It manifested itself through us. to come up in such a format.
Mm.
And yes, so the way we're working is not on a month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis, but we are working from the heart, saying this is a product that we want to bring up to the public because we feel there's a greater good in that, and that on its own will work itself through us to expand within the communities, which is a totally different play field. You know, soccer and football and soccer, they all both of them hold the ball. They both of them use a ball to get somewhere, but one of them will run with it, will hold it, while the other one kicks it in the foot. So there's an end goal that comes up to the same thing. It's just how you do certain things that affects the outcome. And I think where we're heading today is we're moving away from that stress-related month-over-month performance into, let's see what the universe wants us to give out, and be in line with ourselves so that we do not burn ourselves in the process as we're moving forward. Because the other field is all about do to a point where the be loses itself. And now we're moving into let's be first, and we're going to continue doing, but let's be. Let's bring ourselves into whatever we're doing.
And I think that's where Sinead is kind of really kind of out on her own. Well, not out on her own, but let's say having a different approach, is that willingness to not know where it's going, or her willingness to be okay with, you know, not quite sure of what's next, or, you know, that it's kind of being okay with the unknown, I guess. You know, there's no need to know all of the pieces, from what Sinead has said to me in the past. And that opening then to change, to, you know, whatever's coming next. I suppose it's led by your natural curiosity and sense of adventure, and that connection to joy in life. You know, that's the reason for getting up in the morning, is to connect with the joy and live the adventure, you know, with curiosity and playfulness. Like, I think, as opposed to somebody who's getting up in the morning and they're commuting to work and their head is in their hands and they're freaking out going, I can't believe I'm still in this job 40 years later, or whatever that scenario might sound like. So it's, you know, I'd like to give you the last word there, Sinead. I'd love you to share kind of where you are, like from here, what you see coming, not that you might know what's coming around the corner, but what you feel is next for you with that sense of adventure and curiosity.
Really being back out in the world again, I'd say. It's quite a process to go from the where I navigated for 13 years, which was very internal and in semi-isolation, to being back out in the world again. So I've just come back from India, which was absolutely amazing. I was there for 3 months. And that was really the start of getting back out there. So I feel really excited, you know, I got a lot of invitations to stay, to live with people, to work with people, to collaboration projects, to move to other countries as well. So a lot of invitations, and just that feeling of there's so many beautiful people and amazing people in the world, and there's so many stunning places to visit, and so much to see and enjoy in life and in the world, and just feeling really, really excited about the invitation. I can also feel it's not just that I want to be out there. There's something receiving me as well and inviting me to be out there too. So that has me very, very happy.
I know that you just mentioned your trip to India and your experience with Ayurveda. You know, I'm a massive fan of Ayurveda. I'm a big advocate for self-care and practices like that. Justin, you know, to sum it up, like, what was your overall kind of takeaway experience from your commitment to that self-care, to that ritual, to, you know, I suppose doing the practices, the self-care practices that Ayurveda recommends, like, having come through it, how does it Has it changed things for you? Has it? What's the takeaway experience for you?
Well, my first feeling when I felt that it was the moment, because I was a really long time, I was more than 10 years that I wanted to go for Ayurveda, and it just wasn't the moment until I felt it was. And India requires that you surrender, that you stop trying to control everything, and you just let things take its natural pace. If you fight her, you're going to have a horrible time. But if you surrender, she's bountiful beyond belief. She's so generous. And the field of Ayurveda, how subtle it is, how supportive it is, how it doesn't push you to be where you're not. It meets you exactly where you are. And it's like it puts the hand out that you can just step on. The experience is very, very subtle. I'm in awe of what it can do, and especially how it works with trauma, which I had spent 13 years really looking at in depth. It's absolutely incredible the way that it works with trauma. And it's not this absolute. If you make one mistake, that the whole thing unravels. That's not how it happens. If you make a mistake, it's there's a zillion opportunities to correct it, and it just keeps going. And so when I came back, I just introduced little bit by little bit. The practice is not try to do everything all at once, but introduce every day. Get curious about food. How does the 6 tastes work? How does it work with my doshas? With what needs to be brought down? What needs a little bit more space? And really enjoying that creativity and how fun cooking, because cooking was really something that I just kind of did if I was really hungry before. And now it's like being given a whole box of paints and a huge canvas that you can just play with. And I find it very nourishing. I thought, when they said that I had to do the oiling of my body, I thought, oh my God, that's going to be such a pain in the ass to do that every day. I can't see myself doing that. And then I started, okay, just do my feet and my calves. And then I was there like, oh, I like this. And then a little bit more of my legs. And within 2 days, I wanted to do my whole body. And I thought, okay, I commit to, once or twice a week. But it's so nourishing. You just want to do it every day. It's just, you just feel so amazing. And it's simple. There's simple practices. It's not rocket science, but it's a field that has been developing itself for 5,000 years. So the streaming of life intelligence in that field it's unreal. And to be able to feel it and listen to it, and to be able to go to the birthplace of it in Kerala and meet the people who have it in their DNA, who just live it. It's so normalized for them. You walk out on the street, there's little higgledy-piggledy shops that are just Ayurveda, and pharmacies that are just Ayurveda, and Ayurveda products in the supermarket. I went a bit crazy, but I knew I would. So I brought a half-empty suitcase and filled it with shampoos and sun cream and toothpaste and spices, and it's it's so rich, and it's so old. It's a matured field. It's like sitting with a mature grandmother who can tell you the best stories ever. I mean, and she's welcoming. She's warm. She's welcoming. She's nourishing. She feeds you on so many different levels, and you can see my face just comes alive when I start to speak about it. So I think that's also part of the answer.
Well, I want to take this time to thank you, because we're 4 minutes beyond the hour. We thank everybody that's our listeners. We do apologize for the technical difficulties. It happens. But we're also blessed with the technical difficulties, which gives us an opportunity to invite Sinead again on our show. And hopefully you'll be able to join us soon. We'll connect after that. So thank you all for joining us in 12D. This is our 5th episode this year, and we have great guests lined up for the future episodes. So stay in touch, subscribe, click that button at the bottom. And thank you all for being with us. And we'll see you next week.
And thanks to Sinead for sticking with us. Thanks, Sinead. Thanks for being our special guest today. Thanks, Ramzi.
Thank you.